Right, I thought I would post another quick update on exactly what I have been trying to discover and why my car has decided to go on strike. Um, Basically, I've been doing a lot of electrical testing and I think I've trapped the problem. And it's not something that you would immediately think about. But basically, I think this car has had a short, which is a bit concerning because I'm not quite sure why and where it's come from. But basically, the reason that the Petron unit is actually not working, and this was pointed out to me by Paul. It basically, at the end of the last video, I said that I was going to send it off. Paul has replied to me from Techno Frozen and said, from the video, he's had a look at it again and consulted some of his wiring diagrams. It's not actually the Petron unit. The unit is not fine whatsoever. There's no issue with that. The issue is that it's getting a no permanent 12 volt feed. So basically it's getting switched ignition, but the permanent feed from the battery that should be going through the computer all the time, and the ECU, by the way, it's linked to the same fuse. I'll show you, demonstrate that in a second. Basically, there's no 12 volt feed, and that's why it's cutting out. It's not even starting. There's crank, no spark, no fuel. The immobilizer's stuck on. The ECU's not even working. And there's another telltale sign, which I will explain in a second. But basically, I want to go through just a few basic things. Continuity tests are really important, but you must also measure the voltage, because I've known things to have full continuity, or some continuity I should say, for a multimeter where you put it on this setting and it beeps and you think, oh well, it's okay, the circuit's not broken. But then you measure the voltage and the voltage isn't quite 12 volts, it's like 9 or 10. I had that with a fuel pump years ago where I was getting continuity from the front of the car to the back where the wire goes into the pump, but the pump wasn't working because it wasn't getting 12 volts, it was getting 9 volts. So that was the issue there, and I would always remind people to do two sides. So we do a 12 volt test, okay, so you set it to 20 volts on your multimeter, okay, and then we set it to this red section, which is continuity, okay. So it's an open circuit because we're not pointing the probes anywhere. Anyway, I'm going to go through a few little basic things about a Rover 45 fuse box in this update. So the basics: electrical faults. I always start at the battery because that's the heart of the electrical system. So have we got a good ground? Yeah. Okay, so how can we confirm we have a good ground? Well, what you do is you get your two probes on your multimeter and you probe each side, okay? Now what you should be getting is zero, because the difference in voltage between the 2 points should be zero because it's a complete connection. If I took this cable off the battery and then did the same with the 2 probes, it should measure 12 volts. Why does it measure 12 volts? It's because it's the difference between that point in the car and that battery. It should say minus 12. It means basically there is a massive difference in the voltage between this side and this side, and I hope I make that clear. So basically, when people think and they see 12 volts on the multimeter, they think, brilliant, it's working. No, 12 volts means there's no connection between the battery and the earth, the body in this case. So you want zero. So when you probe the positive cable on that, or whatever, whichever probes you want, just put one probe there, one probe there, it will say zero on the multimeter if there is no difference in voltage, if there is a good connection. If there's a bad connection, it might say something like 10 volts, and that means there is a connection, but there's not a very good one. You need to clean your earth point. So top tip. And then we work our way backwards. So in a 45, this is a direct 12 volt connection to the starter motor underneath. That will link straight to the starter motor. It's one of the first things I cleaned, which is why I am able to crank the car for a limited time before the immobilizer cuts that as well. Ideally enough, it's a switched starter motor, so it only works on switched ignition. I'll explain that in a second. So in a Rover 45, we've got that going on, and then we've got the positive cable going straight into the fuse board here. Now what we have here is a mixture. We've got some standard fuses here, we've got some fusible links in plastic boxes here. I'm not concerned about them because I think from what people said they rarely go, and they are very, very thick items. They're all 50, these are 50 amps, the pink ones are 30. These relays, we've got a fuel pump relay, we've got a coolant fan relay, we've got, I think, the air compressor relay, and we've got something else, I can't remember. And this is for, oh no, that's an air compressor relay, the small one, and there's one missing because I don't have a front fog lights. What we have back here is some fusible links. Now a lot of these are not used. I've got for some reason I've got a random screw in mine for some reason. Actually, I shouldn't really be poking around. Let's just take that off before I start getting an electric shock. Safety. So basically you've got this side, you've got this mega fuse here that connects this 12-volt feed from the battery to this. Now what's this? Well, this is the cable that goes round under the back of the engine to the alternator there. Can you see that mount, that bolt? That's the other end to that cable. That is the positive connection to the alternator. So the alternator is earthed to the block, okay, it's earthed that way, and the alternator charges the battery by this cable going backwards through that fuse back to the battery, and then it goes through to the earth, and then the earth to the alternator, and that's how the alternator battery is connected. Very simple, back to basic stuff, but I thought I would make that very clear, especially on a 45. That alternator connection is connected to this fuse here, this fuse here, okay, which is a 70 amp fuse. This one, this side, is only connected to these two, which are not fitted. I think this is for glow plugs for diesels. This one isn't fitted, and these two, I can't remember exactly what they're for, but they're not relevant, but they're connected to the 12-volt side of things, okay? So they permanently have a 12-volt feed. They do not go through this fuse. The only thing that goes through this fuse, okay, is power that goes to the alternator cable and this inline fuse. And guess what that fuse controls, ladies and gentlemen? You've got it. That fuse sends power to 4 fuses. One is the glove box light, one is the interior light, one is the ECU, and the other, you guessed it, the Petron module. This is our problem. I should say this is my problem because it is my car, but I wanted to share this because if any of you have this issue, this is exactly what stupidity can happen. Broken wires happen, and I really was fearing the worst when Paul said, I don't think it's the Petron unit. That really alarmed me then. But when he mentioned about the 12-volt feed, I'm thinking all of this. So what I'm saying to you, and this is 99% what I think is gone wrong, and I'm going to order one immediately. I may even, do you know what? I may even order a spare fuse box because it comes with all these bits and pieces that you may need. But what I've proven here is that this fuse is completely and utterly there is no continuity, and I've tested it. I'll try and see if I can get my probe. So we're on there now, and we can hear the multimeter. Okay, so we've got this. Nothing. Open circuit. Nothing. And yet, if I was to probe the connection between here and here, continuity. If I was to probe that and probe the back of the alternator, continuity. That's your problem. Because this is blown, electricity cannot get to here, therefore this fuse has no electricity, therefore no power to the ECU, body control unit, the glove box light and the interior light. Strange enough, I don't know why they're on the same circuit, but if I just hook the battery back up now without getting a shock, no! And I'll get the keys out and will prove myself right. The instrument packs are... go away. Right. And that's why we're getting some response, because it's switched. and a lot of these are on switched power, which is why we're getting instrument lights. Anyway, no, sorry, excuse me, no glove box light, and guess what? Oh dear, we're not getting anything, and that proves exactly that it's that fuse that's at fault. I am so pleased that it is this fuse, because I hate broken wires. I hate that sort of stuff. I've done it before. I've traced wires, and you know what? You're going down the route of an auto electrician. Hopefully I've shown you some hints and tips, but always use continuity and the 12-volt check. Now, I've done a 12-volt check between that power cable and the alternator side through that fuse, and guess what the difference was, as I explained with the battery negative terminal? 12 volts. There should not be 12 volts difference on my multimeter. It should say 0. It should be continuous, but because it says -12, it means that there's 12 volts on one side and there isn't on the other. That's the difference in voltage between 2 points. That's why continuity doesn't always tell you the full picture. You must use a 20 volt setting on your multimeter to be able to test things. I really do hope that this has been useful, because if you have a short and you get this exact symptom, don't blame the Petron unit. I need to ascertain that it is that fuse, and I'm pretty sure it is, because everything ticks the boxes in terms of that. You do need access to a good wiring diagram and a good brain. I'm not saying that you haven't got a brain, trust me, but you need to look at the fuse wiring diagram and go backwards from the battery. So what works, what is working, what doesn't work, and then you start to put the pieces of the puzzle together. But that is exactly what my issue is. But anyway, my Petron unit, I've been complaining that for ages. The buttons are not responding very well. Well, the unit is not responding well to the Petron fob. It responds, but as a few people have seen at the Pride of Longbridge, I have to click it 4 or 5 times for it to open a door, lock the car, or open the boot. It's like the unit is going deaf. I think that is a fault of these things, and Paul is definitely the person who can actually sort that out. Whether I'll have to send in the fobs, I don't know, but I want to get the fuse sorted, and then I am going to send in that unit and get those relays changed for peace of mind. They may be the originals, they may be still working, but my question is, for how long? I don't want to be faffing around again getting that console out again. It took 20 minutes, which is quick for most people, but I don't want to be doing it. Anyway, I'm going to leave you here, because the next video will be of me actually completing this, and hopefully it actually works. But I will put this out as soon as I make it, because I feel that I need to have some content coming out quite regularly. But we will come back to this car, and it will be a very short video indeed. So you take care, guys. I will see you very soon. Onwards and upwards.